I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear the thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hello, happy Saturday and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. This is not an exceptionally busy week. This is now our normal working pattern and it's not safe. Things are stretched thinner and thinner and are at breaking point. When things snap, the casualties will either be children's lives or the mental and physical health of our staff. That's an excerpt from an email written by Dr. Alison Timmers, a pediatrician and senior doctor on staff, written to Tony Chambers, the hospital's chief executive. It was written in December 2015. Lucy Letby, 33 years old now, capitalized on the difficulties the neonatal unit faced to target her victims. What does that mean? Capitalized how? But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. By the way, I want to discuss a couple of things. Sadism as a separate subject. Identity, which is one of the pillars of the whole true crime analysis, or it should be. And then, would you guys be interested in me covering Nicola Bulley? Not as a series, just giving my assessment on what I think happened there. I did analyze it. I did write a script, during the inquest. I didn't think it was appropriate during the whole thing to say what I thought because it is quite sensitive. But would you guys be interested in getting my take on it? And then for the guys in the audience, the guys listening, would you like me to compare Stockton Rush to James Cameron? That's something I've also been working on. Let me know in the comments. If you're enjoying this episode, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button and let's get started. So I think it's very appropriate that we are on a weekend right now. It's a Saturday. Did you go out on Friday night? Are you socializing this weekend? Right? And how would you feel if someone asked you to work either Friday night or tonight, Saturday night, or sometime over the weekend? How would you feel? Well, Lucy was someone who would volunteer. She would particularly gravitate towards weeknight shifts and working on the weekend. And the question is, was that because she was essentially friendless and, more importantly, boyfriendless? Now, I think if we ask the question, how was Lucy able to fly under the radar, basically do her foul deeds in plain sight and get away with it again and again and again and again? Well, I think it helped that the unit at Chester Hospital was already experiencing a few problems. It's hard to say because this was basically halfway through her reign of terror. It's hard to say how much of those problems she was responsible for, but clearly there were other problems as well, in terms of the kind of a staff shortage and just a busy, everyone is really busy. And so, do you notice things that you perhaps normally would be more aware of? I'm not sure whether Lucy would have been aware of that particular email. It was copied to other doctors on staff, but probably there was quite a lot of grumbling and quite a lot of, gossip and sort of not office politics, but that sort of the murmuring of, how people feel about what is going on. And Lucy would have been aware that the situation was being perpetuated or being allowed to remain. The status quo was continuing rather than ameliorated. There was not really an intervention. There was not really specific steps taken to change the situation, which meant that she could feel safe that she could do what she was doing and not be held responsible. It also helped that Lucy was likely aware of a lack of responsiveness from the powers that be. In other words, when she was doing something and gets away with it, and bear in mind, right in the beginning, she did something, murdered 3 babies and then got away with it, even though the doctors quite early on thought it was her. Nothing really happened. And that gave her confidence. That gives the confidence to do it again, which is what she did, 7 times in total. According to an article in the Times, a senior doctor warned that the neonatal unit where Lucy Letby worked was chaotic, overstretched, and unsafe. And that was for patients and staff 2 years before the serial killer nurse was suspended. It's a little bit of a misleading statement, that, because by then Lucy had already taken the lives of, I think it was at least 3 to 5 babies. Dr. Alison Timmis said that staff were actually in tears because they were being forced to look after more babies than the unit could safely accommodate. In her note, copied to other senior managers, she told him, "Over the past few weeks, I've seen several medical and nursing colleagues in tears." Now, it makes one wonder what beige Lucy thought when she saw her colleagues in tears, especially when she was the reason, probably during some of these incidents, for reducing them to tears. And it makes me wonder, in a sense, perhaps this was an inversion of the high school schoolyard. In a way, an office can sometimes feel like high school, especially if people are behaving in an immature fashion. And you can imagine in a hospital where there are a lot of staff, sometimes of a similar age, sometimes of a different rank, that it could feel like high school as well. So here she could be the big fish, especially if she knew what she was doing, and by pulling certain levers, she could turn some of her colleagues into outcasts or make their lives more difficult. I just wonder whether that's how it started, where it was really just trying to show herself to be superior and being in a kind of a competition with them. And that a side effect from that was that she also saw how her cynical efforts at sabotage brought doctors running. And so when she decided she liked one, she manipulated him as well using this particular tactic. Does that make sense? In her email to the CEO, Dr. Timmis also said that the staff were getting upset because they know that the care they are providing falls below their high standards. And she said that the staff at the Countess of Chester Hospital were chronically overworked and felt no one is listening. And I think that whole no one is listening thing, again, is something that benefited Lucy. The fact that no one was listening to the other doctors, those 2 doctors that basically suspected her, that benefited her. And so within the noise of disorder, Lucy's actions would be essentially invisible. It was just another activity, another signal going on in the noise that they just wouldn't be able to decipher or respond to. Or so she thought. It's a credit to the 2 doctors who spotted her as quickly as they did, but it's a curse in terms of the culture of the bureaucrats in charge, that it still went on for as long as it did. And that's really the other side of this whole story, that there probably does need to be an inquiry, accountability in terms of the heads of state, so to speak. Back to the article, evidence seen by the Sunday Times shows that Lucy was keen to work nights and weekends and volunteered to do extra shifts to plug staffing gaps. So the question is, why did she want to work nights and weekends? Wasn't it because she was essentially friendless and boyfriendless? According to the article, this often left her alone with children she was not allocated to care for, and she used the opportunity to attack and kill them. Many of the incidents were clustered around midnight and 4 a.m. Now, I must say, this whole idea that she was actually not allocated to care for them, and I guess because there was a staff shortage, she was allocated. perhaps she was trying to create a drama, a crisis, which then made her, I guess, respond to it, and then in a weird way manufactured a situation where she would then be seen as someone who could deal with a situation like that, if that makes sense. In other words, it's almost like giving herself, artificially of course, through contrivance, work experience, but obviously doing this through cynical means. It also raised the question, was Lucy bored? We know that she complained of being bored in some of the units where the babies were healthier. Perhaps she wanted access to the more sickly neonatal so that she wouldn't be bored, but then also saw this as a cover for murder, the fact that they were poorly anyway. The kind of sense I get is that she was ambitious, that she was trying to move up the hierarchy, and she was also trying to gain the approval and validation of her colleagues, including the doctors around her, and eventually, especially one dashing doctor that was married, that she developed a crush on. She wanted him to respect her and to value her expertise. Something I often see in true crime, and I'm going to end off with this, is we tend to see things in the rearview mirror where someone has been charged, sentenced, caught, or whatever. We don't see the process leading up to that. We just see that end result. And so we see the criminal psychology as a foregone conclusion, that someone must have a disorder or they were a psychopath all along. And I think what you don't see is that this person is on a path and they actually are a lot like us. They've got a lot of similar traits to the rest of us. And so one's got to imagine those first inklings of criminal psychology could have happened by accident, or because she saw the response from a different nurse and decided that she liked that reaction. And then from there it became deliberate, and then perhaps by accident she wanted to create an incident or a crisis. By accident killed a child, but then enjoyed the amount of fuss and drama that it created, and then started to repeat it. So what I'm trying to say is that it may have started off as just trying to get a reaction and doing something quote unquote small to do this, and then getting so caught up in it that she would do it more and more, and when she saw she could get away with it, she did it even more. And so, is it also possible that there were varying degrees of collapses which then gave her varying degrees of satisfaction, and then she just took the ante up higher and higher? And I think when you see it in that way, it does become comprehensible. I don't mean to say that what she was doing is rational or justified, just that one can comprehend what is going on in her sick psychology. Does that make sense? Thank you for listening. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll see you guys next time.